Good morning, students. Welcome to the biology class. We are continuing with our same chapter, life processes. In our previous session, we have started with the respiration, which is considered to be very important life process. We discussed about the various pathways by which the glucose break down to give you the energy, that is aerobic, anaerobic pathways. Along with that, we are having a special pathway that is in the lack of oxygen. So today we will discuss about the respiration in animals. Respiration in animals, unicellular organisms like amoeba, sponges, hydra, they respire through the general body surface, whereas multicellular organism, that is earthworm, so they have a special mode of respiration, that is skin. So earthworm respire through the skin, whereas aquatic animals like fishes, prawn, they respire through the gills. So respiratory organ of earthworm is the skin. Respiratory organ for the fishes and prawn, that is the gill. Whereas insects, cockroaches, they respire through the trachea or the air tubes. Mammals, human beings, birds, they respire through the lungs. So if the question comes, what is the respiratory organ of human being? Then answer is lungs. What is the respiratory organ of earthworm? Then it is skin. But in this we seen that the unicellular, multicellular, they have a very specific respiratory organs. Why? Out of all the organ, the gill is considered as a respiratory organ. Why the lungs is considered as a respiratory organ? What characteristics, what features should be there by which we consider the lungs, the gills, the trachea as the respiratory organs? So in this image you can see the various respiratory organs, that is the surface amoeba. Respiration organ is cell surface, whereas in case of earthworm, that is the entire outer skin through which the exchange of gases takes place. For the fish, or you can say the aquatic animal, that is your gill. And in the cockroach, that is your insect, that is through the trachea. And in the mammals, that is with the help of the lungs. So we are having a different respiratory organs depending upon their habitat, and they have a common characteristics, and these are. So the question is, why is the rate of breathing higher in the aquatic organism than the terrestrial organism? Terrestrial means that is your land organism. So why is the rate of breathing higher in aquatic? This is your NCERT question. Since the amount of dissolved oxygen in water is very low compared to the amount of oxygen in air, therefore the rate of breathing is higher in the aquatic organism. So this is very important 1 mark question, that why the rate of breathing is higher in aquatic as compared to the land organism, because amount of dissolved oxygen is very low as compared to the oxygen in air. So the rate of breathing is higher in the aquatic organism like fish. So various characteristics of the respiratory surface. The respiratory organs have a structure that increase the surface area which comes in contact with oxygen rich air. So they have a increased surface area, and the surface is very fine, thin and delicate to facilitate easy exchange of gases, that is your O2 and CO2. They are richly supplied with blood capillaries so that exchange of the gases takes place. They are placed within the body in order to be protected, so there has to be a passage to take air to this area. So they have a complete pathway through which we take the air and reach to that particular organ, and they have an increased surface area. They should be thin and delicate, richly supplied by the blood capillaries so that the exchange of the gases takes place. And all these characteristics or the features are being fulfilled by the gills in fish or in the aquatic organism and lungs in the mammal, human beings, and so on. And next, and the very important topic is human respiratory system. In human being, the respiratory system begins with nostril, that is your nose, which leads into the nasal cavity, and this passage is lined by hairs and mucus, and they have a very special role or the function. Hairs helps in filtration of the air, whereas mucus help in trapping the dust particles and microbes and prevent their entry into the lungs. So the hair and the mucus, they have their special role, that is filtration as well as trapping the dust particles and microbes, so that the air we should inhale, that should be free from these particular substances. So in this image you can see this is a nasal cavity, and then you can see this is the pharynx, which is a common passage for the food as well as air, and then it will lead into the trachea. Trachea is the throat, or you can say the windpipe, and on that you can see a rings. These are the cartilaginous rings which are present on the trachea, so that it should not collapse when we exhale the air out or when they are without the air. And the pharynx and the trachea, it is being covered by the cartilaginous flap-like structure known as epiglottis, and that should be cover your trachea when you take the food, when you swallow the food, so that the food should not come into our windpipe. So this is the function of epiglottis. So when the trachea divides, it will forms the primary, secondary bronchi, and then it will forms into the balloon-like structure which is called as the alveoli. These are being present in the pink-shaped balloon-like structure, or you can say the triangular soft organ-like structure, that is your lungs, which is considered as your respiratory organ. And this nasal cavity, your pharynx, your trachea, bronchi to alveoli, this is called as a conducting system through which the air passes, and they all are resting on the dome-shaped structure which is being known as the diaphragm. So this diagram you have to draw in your notebooks along with the human respiratory system. So the first we have discussed, that is begins with the nostril, which leads into the nasal cavities. This passage is lined by the hair and the mucus. Hair helps in filtration, whereas the mucus helps in trapping the dust particles and microbes and prevent their entry into the lungs. The nasal cavity continues through the pharynx and larynx in the throat into the windpipe or the trachea. Trachea is internally supported by rings of cartilage which ensure that the trachea does not collapse, means they are not going to be collapse, that is not going to be any harm when there is no air in the windpipe when we exhaled out the air. The trachea runs up to the middle of the chest cavity and divides into two primary bronchi, each of which enter the lungs. Inside the lungs, the primary bronchi divide into smaller and smaller tubes, each of which finally terminates into the balloon-like structure called as alveolus. Alveoli, that is the plural form of your alveolus, provide the surface for exchange of gases. If alveolar surface is being spread out, it would cover about 80 meters square. So that is a complete surface area, the large surface area, which is considered to be the main feature of the respiratory organ. The wall of alveoli are thin and supplied with extensive network of blood vessels and capillaries. This facilitates easy exchange of gases between the blood and air in the alveoli. So all these characteristics or the features are being covered by the alveoli because they have a surface area, a wide surface area, increased surface area, and that is thin. The surface area, the wall of the alveoli are thin, supplied with an extensive network of the blood vessels or the capillaries, and this facilitates the easy exchange of the gases, that is O2 and CO2, between the blood and the air in the alveoli. So alveoli is considered as the functional unit of the lung through which the exchange of the gases takes place. So the lungs are the pair of conical, highly spongy air-filled sac formed of millions of alveoli. So here you can see there are the millions of the alveoli are there, and these blue and red lines, or you can say the tubes, are being known as the capillaries, means they are surrounded by the blood vessels, surrounded by the blood capillaries. So this is the blood capillary. So carbon dioxide is being out, oxygen is being in. That is the wall of the alveoli through which the exchange of the gases takes place. So the lungs are enclosed by double layer membrane called as the pleura, and two pleural membranes are separated by thin space filled with pleural fluid. And what is the function of that pleural fluid? That lubricates the membrane to avoid the friction. And lungs are enclosed in the airtight thoracic cavity, and they all are resting on the dome-shaped structure, muscular dome-shaped structure known as diaphragm. Please write down this line too. They are resting on the muscular dome-shaped structure, D-O-M-E, dome-shaped structure known as the diaphragm. So these are the various, you can say, the parts of your human respiratory system, starting from the nostril, function of the hair and the mucus. Then we are having the pharynx, which is the common passage for your food as well as your air, and trachea. The trachea is being supported by the C-shaped cartilaginous rings to avoid the collapsing after the exhaling of the air, and they are also having the flap-like structure epiglottis, which used to be cover the trachea when we used to take the food, so that the food should not enter into our windpipe, that is into the trachea. And then it is being divided into the bronchi, which enters into the lungs, then bronchi into the balloon-like structure, that is your alveoli. Alveoli are being surrounded by the blood capillaries. They have a increased surface area. The wall of alveoli is thin, and they are surrounded by the blood capillaries so that the exchange of the gases takes place. So this is the structural and the functional unit of the respiratory system. The lungs, they are the conical, highly spongy air-filled, formed of a millions of the alveoli, and they are being enclosed by the double membrane that is known as the pleura, and double membrane, in between the double membrane they are having a fluid that is called as the pleural fluid to avoid the friction, because they are being enclosed into the thoracic, that is called as a rib cage. So they are highly protected inside the thoracic cavity, which is made up of a ribs. So this is all about your human respiratory system and respiration in animals. Our next lesson will be on the mechanism of respiration, that how we intake the air, how we exhale the air, how the transport of the gases takes place. So kindly note all the content of PPTs in your notebook along with the diagram. Till then, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.